Here in France, reaction's been particularly sharp to the Harvey Weinstein scandal. On the one hand, there are the allegations themselves, allegations of harassment, assault, rape against the movie producer. And then there's the fact that all of Hollywood and Cannes knew about it for decades. And that's probably why this story has gone beyond moguls and movie stars. A French journalist, Sandra Muller, launching the hashtag Balance ton porc, which translates as make your pig squeal or rat out your pig. We're going to be asking our panel if the term is appropriate and if ratting out should mean victims should come forward with their personal stories or actual naming and shaming. The French president on Sunday reacting to the Weinstein scandal himself with plans to pass new legislation that could include the penalization of catcalls on the street. Will that work? More broadly, 7 years after everyone branded the Dominique Strauss-Kahn affair as a watershed moment for France, how much have attitudes really changed? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at France's Weinsteins, and with us is journalist Sophia Lilia Rossini, who is part of an exciting project, participative media it's called, which is the Zone d'Expression Prioritaire. You bring together journalists from the mainstream media and people from working class district, young people.
Yeah, we are all as journalists engaged in this project, and we are making some workshop through the country so as to give them the task and to teach them how to write, how to express themselves as well.
All right, that's the Zone d'Expression Prioritaire. With us as well, thank you for being with us, is the correspondent for The Atlantic, Rachel Donadio.
Hi.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Want to welcome as well actor and musician Avant Strangel. Strangel. Yes. Let's pronounce the J.
There you go.
And who is with us as well and who can tell us a little bit about attitudes, I guess, in the acting world when it comes to these issues. And Ralph Harfouche, founder of the Red Thread Institute for Digital Culture, and who more broadly thinks about what's going on in our workplace. Your upcoming book is called Hustle and Float. Welcome back.
Thank you so much.
The France 24 debate, where you can join the conversation, and you have on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. Yes, it's about much more than the French actresses claiming they were the targets of Harvey Weinstein's advances. The scandal in this country has triggered a raw nerve with women who are fed up. Kathy Clifford has the story.
The movement, which has spiraled from the hashtag Balance ton porc or rat out your pig, began with this French journalist based in New York. She hopes opening the floodgates on social media will translate to more concrete changes.
It's a way to talk about it, to make a first step. Then they can reflect, see the reactions, and consider maybe taking another step.
France's First Lady gave words of support to the movement as she attended a play about sexual abuse with members of the government. President Emmanuel Macron has added his voice to the global outcry, saying he wants to make it easier for women to speak out. This Monday, the French Equality Minister proposed a bill focusing on sexual harassment in public spaces and sexual violence against minors. Justice Minister Nicole Belloubet explained the government's looking at how to fit new rules, which could include on-the-spot fines, into the existing legal framework.
What we still need to figure out is if a new criminal offense needs to be created, which implies a criminal law and all sorts of heavy legal provisions. Or if we could qualify these situations happening in the street, situations which still need to be precisely defined, as a sexist offense, which could lead to a fine, a warning, and which could be carried out more quickly.
A group made up of MPs, police and magistrates is now working on a definition which officers could realistically enforce on the streets. A murky area in which they must mark a line at the point unwelcome flirtation becomes harassment.
Yeah, before we ask about that line between flirtation and harassment, your reaction first when you saw the Weinstein scandal break, did you think that this is something to do with me? You're not an actress, you don't work in Hollywood.
I am not an actress, but we have to figure out with this problem. And I think this is a real topic, because here in France, to my mind, you know, I think there is a code of silence about this, and we have to stop thinking that sexual harassment or harassment in the basic word is something what happens the night, you know, in the middle of a very tight street in the dark and stuff, you know. And it is about something who concern each woman in this country, I think. And I made the pool of so many women. 100% of women have once of their life been victim of harassment in the street, on their family, in their job, and I think we really have to deal with this.
There's a tolerance level, isn't there? People are used to it.
Yeah, and I think it's a problem of education, you know. Porno is free, you know, in the web, in different websites, and I think it's banalized, and this is the reason why young men and people in the street and in
think it's okay to make sexually suggestive remarks.
And even when you are going to the police and so as to denounce this, they say, okay, what were your outfit this day, you know? And it's like it's a problem of only of women, and it's provocation from women. And
so you're saying 100% of the women around you that you polled said they'd been harassed in some form or another?
Once in their life.
What's your experience?
In my experience also, every day, once a day, I have a comment, you know, about my outfit, or I am like, even in some jobs, you know, you are just a body and not a brain, and it is very difficult as a woman to live with this, you know. And once I have been also victim of a tentative of rape, you know, and when I have been to the police, they said, okay, but you don't have to be surprised by this aggression, because you were wearing a dress and it was 11 in the evening, you know, so you don't have to, we apologize. And it was really difficult because I have been victim of an aggression, you know. And after that, even the police, who is supposed to protect you, there was not a protection. And after that, I have been in front of this man, you know, 4 times. Because as a victim, you don't have the right to have someone to defend you in the jail, you know, in the trial, sorry. And I had been to this trial by my own, and I made my defense by my own.
Because your case went to court.
Yeah. And it's a real problem, you know. And even in my job, when in some meetings, you have some people who think that they have the right to comment your dress, or to comment your outfit, or to comment your haircut, and you are like, okay, I'm here so as to work, you know. And as a result, to my mind, I think it's the moment to deal with this topic.
Rahaf Harfouch, is the story you've just heard from Sophia something that's French in a way, or is it universal?
I mean, I think it's universal. I've lived in many different countries, Canada, the US, Switzerland, now France. And in all of those cities and places that I've lived, I have been followed, I have been catcalled, I have been grabbed, I have been touched without my consent on the metro. I have been, I mean, and this is not just even on the streets. I have had inappropriate comments made by bosses and clients and colleagues. So I think this is not just a Hollywood problem. This is a problem that runs across industry around the world. There is a real issue with the line of what is acceptable. And as Sophia said, I mean, the issue is that bringing it up, it's become such a hassle, because then all of a sudden the burden is on you. And so why would you bring it up if you risk losing your job, if you risk being labeled as a troublemaker, or if the police try to shame you for what you're wearing? We're not really creating conditions where, you know, women feel comfortable raising these things. We're creating a condition where women are actually penalized and then shamed for daring to speak up about these things in the first place.
Alessandro, that's one of the interesting points. When the Harvey Weinstein story broke, initially there was victim blaming that we saw a little bit, and then there was backtracking on it.
I mean, you know, me being an actor and sort of in the industry, and this might sound a little harsh, I find it a bit comical that all of a sudden the media is shocked about this because it's not new. I mean, there's a term for it. It's called the casting couch. Okay, so the fact that this event is, you know, sort of comes, and I have to thank social media for it, for allowing it to snowball. But I think we kind of do ourselves a disservice when we look at it, because not all predators are male and not all victims are female. And they're not all adults. I mean, this is something, I mean, if you want to look at Hollywood itself, it's predator central. I mean, you have previous child stars that are completely destroyed. You know, Jeff Bridges, DeKirk, Brad Pitt mentioned it, Corey Feldman. They have all mentioned that these predators are out there and no one is listening. So Harvey Weinstein pops up and everyone's pointing fingers now, but it's nothing new. I'm grateful because of social media. Now it's really allowed it to snowball and people can come out and share their stories. But that is something I think that it's not new. There are a lot of sort of enablers in this, and but I'm glad that it's being addressed now.
A lot of enablers on the hashtag F24 debate. Edith saying it is so much easier to incriminate the victims instead of recognizing that around these people there is a circle of staff who are necessarily aware and let them. You're saying you're thankful that social media allowed this to snowball. Rachel Donadio, again, we were saying at the outset this comparison with 2011. There was social media back then when Dominique Strauss-Kahn was incriminated, but it's changed.
I think the atmosphere has really changed. I wasn't in France for the DSK incident, but I think a couple of things are different now. One, the investigative reporting that reported on the Weinstein case has inside information from inside his company. It's clear there are people from inside the company making it clear that he'd been a problem. So it was easier to do that reporting and know you were on solid ground. Also, I think that just the climate of other such investigations, Roger Ailes at Fox News, Bill O'Reilly at Fox News, to say nothing of Bill Cosby, there's this. The media landscape is changing. It's more about readers, it's more about subscribers, and less about the power of advertisers. And also there's this guy in the White House called Donald Trump, and that has truly changed the landscape and unleashed a huge amount of anger on the part of women. And I cannot help but think that that's not a fundamental difference, as well as the social media landscape.
Which brings us to the issue of this hashtag that's being used in France, balance ton porc, which is hard to translate, but I can say it's
pretty easy.
Rat out a pig is, I guess, the closest thing we can say. It's quite violent. Balance ton porc. It's in there.
Pretty direct. Yeah.
Well, it's a violent act.
And they are just fed up, you know, and us as countries in the US, in France, in other countries, in Europe, you know, we are claiming like, okay, we are so good in about the women's rights and stuff, and why do we always pointing the countries in Africa, in the Middle East and stuff, and in our countries we have real problems about also the pay, you know, and there is a difference between the salary of a woman and a man, and this is a real problem, and they are fed up because every day they are harassed, and I think this is the reason why we have to deal with this, you know, and we cannot claim to be a country with the equality and stuff, and not, you know,
and not be able to do that. But do you think that how far should women go on social media? Like, should they name names?
Yeah.
They should name names.
Why not?
I agree.
Why not? Once in the south of France, in Marseille, this summer, you know, I have seen a rape, you know, in front of me. We have seen a rape with other friends, you know, and we were like, it was yeah, it's
because you talked about victim blaming earlier, and if you don't file, the attorneys are warning, saying if you don't file some kind of legal proceeding with police, at some point. So if you
Yeah,
don't
but
issue a
the point
report
is
and
that
you
it
go
is
and name
not
people, they can sue
considered,
you afterwards.
And the only issue is that social medias are the place where each woman can give words to what happened with them, you know. So,
but balance and pour, I thought
think
was to reveal a name. It's to
maybe not to name
it's to talk about how you feel, but I mean, it's a legal minefield. I mean, I think that the group therapy aspect of it is extremely helpful, and people can come out and say, this happened to me, this happened to me. I looked at my Facebook feed and it's like,
yeah,
oh my
me
God,
too.
this is a huge
Hashtag
amount
me too,
of information from people. But then when it becomes a legal issue, that's pretty tricky.
There's also a difference between saying this happened to me too and then by pointing fingers. I mean, let's not forget that people came out on the record against Harvey Weinstein years ago, and those people suffered professional setbacks. They were essentially blackballed. They were prevented from getting roles. They were prevented from getting access. They were locked out of projects. Many women who do try to come across, especially if it's their superior, could get fired. So I'm not quite sure the right approach is to name names. I think it's much more powerful to form a digital network of solidarity and let people know that they're talking to each other.
Some thought rat out your pig is too strong. Instead, they're following the lead of actress Elisa Milano, who's encouraging the Me Too hashtag, which has also gone viral here in France. In Italy, che la volte che, am I pronouncing that correctly?
No, but I haven't followed the Italian reaction, but Italy is, I mean, it's kind of a different context. I don't think there's been anything as big as Balance ton porc. If anything, some of the actresses who came forward and talked against Harvey Weinstein, including Asia Argento, are being belittled in the Italian press, and there are pictures of her in very scantily clad outfits.
Right. That hashtag, which I mispronounced, started by a writer, Giulia Blasi.
Okay.
Is it the same kind of culture in Italy when it comes to what men feel they're entitled to do?
Italy is kind of medieval a little bit when it comes to this, and I think that might be changing, but I haven't seen the outpouring that I've seen in France, and frankly, I've been surprised a little bit. Maybe I'm just naive as an American, but you know, there's an interesting continental divide. Americans, or the French, always have this sense of like, oh, Americans are so moralistic when it comes to sex, but sex isn't the same as sexual harassment or rape or cases like that, and it kind of took the Anglo-Saxon, as we like to say, investigative media to open the floodgates, and it's interesting that it's having such an effect in France, and maybe it'll change a little bit in Italy too. But I'm really struck by how
I don't see how it
playing in
can't.
France.
I mean, if the one silver lining in Weinstein's catastrophic and meteoric downfall, if I may, and a very spectacularly beautiful one, is the fact that it got the dialogue. It put it out there, because like I said, this has existed, you know, for decades. It's nothing new.
And it's getting out there. I'm going to interrupt you very rudely, but we'll be right back. And We'll pick up on that point. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate. We knew the Harvey Weinstein scandal would resonate here in France, where there's a huge film industry, but it's gone way beyond just movies, and we're talking about it in the company of journalist Sofia Lili Ossini. Welcome back as well to Rachel Donadio, correspondent for The Atlantic, actor and musician. Avant Strangel?
Avant Strangel.
Strangel.
Yes.
I've got it wrong both times.
You'll get it eventually, but by then the show will be over.
Oh, dear. And with us as well, Rav Harfouche, who is the founder of the Red Thread Institute for Digital Culture, her upcoming book, A Hustle and Float. I want to get back to something that we heard in part one of our discussion, we were asking what's changed in the 7 years since the Dominique Strauss-Kahn affair in this country. And one is people are being able to speak out on social media a lot more. They're using it a lot more. On the other hand, you also heard at the outset, Sophia, saying that the internet's not always a force for good when it comes to women, and especially with pornography acting as an enabler for bad behavior among men.
I mean, it's not just pornography. We're talking about bad behavior that is protected in many ways on the social media platforms that we use. There have been many abhorrent tweets that have been put on Twitter by men who threaten journalists, who threaten them with rape, who threaten them with violence, which apparently does not seem to be a violation of Twitter's terms of service. So I think in many cases, this conversation is really we need to have looks about what are the behaviors that these tools are amplifying and what are the policies we need to put in place to create safer environments. It can't just be on the victim, up to the victim to have to name names. I think we need to all do our part to make sure that the environment is as safe as possible.
How do you do it? How do you do it?
Well, for one thing, I think that under any circumstances, making any sort of rape joke or any sort of threat against another person should be an immediate removal from the platform. I mean, I've had things tweeted at me that have just been horrible in nature, and somehow that's not a violation. Those people are allowed to stay on. I think we should be very clear and have better reporting. There are many examples of women who have reported to Twitter horrible tweets where they're being sworn at, they're being threatened, they're being all of these awful things, and the reporting mechanism doesn't seem to actually have any effect in protecting them.
No effect in protecting them. Sofia Hosseini, one of the things that is being said is the reason Balance ton porc, this hashtag in France, has gone so viral is because younger people, millennials, are more inclined to speak out than older generations. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that because we have young people have other way, you know, to express themselves right now, and they are using Snapchat, they are using Twitter, they are using Facebook, you know, and they find the social media as the only way to say how they are fed up, you know. And I think we have also to go back to the roots of this problem, and the fact that the point is that women are sexualized, and sexualizing women is creating wealth, you know, and you have a lot of money behind this, the sex industry and also the advertisements, and you can always see women, you want to sell a watch, just put a woman naked and it's okay, you know. So it is not a good way, you know, to go to the real equality and the real respect of women, you know. And I have heard this morning in the radio dealing about the difference between seduction and harassment. And they say like, okay, so right now we cannot seduce someone. And I think there is a big difference between both. And even in seduction, you have so many ways to do it. And I think the point is respect and only respect. And social media are the media, you know, to share this and to share that they are fed up.
Evan, let me get your reaction here to what one of the viewers has tweeted on the hashtag F24debate. What makes me ashamed about harassment is I may have already done it, thinking it was only an innocuous gesture. Your thoughts on that?
You're asking me? Mm-hmm. I don't really, in terms of approaching someone or doing something like that. My mother raised me very well, and I'm not trying to make myself out to be some kind of saint, but that's not how I roll. In terms of, you can have a conversation with someone without, sending out any sort of creepy sexual vibe. So if someone, I mean, the fact that this person is thinking, okay, maybe I've done it, they are at least conscious on some level or have some type of sensitivity that says, okay, maybe I need to check my behavior. But in terms of a checklist of how not to be creepy.
So working in the United States and working in France, is it the same or is it different?
In terms of the events that can happen, they're identical. I mean, like I said before, not all victims are women and not all predators are men. It's not just the movie industry. I think they should expand it. I mean, okay, you have Hollywood, you have fashion, you have the music industry. I mean, they had a case with what I think was NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys to where their manager was molesting them. So this phenomena of abuse of power, though I would agree that women get the majority of it, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we think it's a gender-specific event. It's a power thing, pure and simple. Statistically, men have more power, so of course, more men are doing it. But it's something that I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't look at everything, because it's a mess.
It's a power thing, but it's mostly it's mostly, I think, women who are mostly the victims of this. Of course, there can be some men, but I think the social media
But how can you say that? Because, all right, when we talk about wines, and I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
But it's like, if we're equal here, I'm going to talk to you as if I would talk to a guy. I respect all of you. But in terms of, people make choices. Me, I'm a black male as an actor. So my roles, it's like I have to make a decision. I have to figure out what line am I not going to cross. The majority of the roles that I've gotten in the beginning, drug dealer, convict, criminal. And so for me, it's like, okay, you have to make a decision. The whole thing with Weinstein, there were enablers. In terms of, you had mentioned something about fashion and women being objectified or sexualized. On the same token, I hear women saying that's empowering. So if a woman is going to make the choice to do advertising, it's like, whether a woman is sexual or not, it merits respect. So for me, the excuse of, oh, she was too sexy, she had it coming, I completely disagree with that. But in terms of the whole sexual thing, that's not an excuse.
I was going to just get back to one thing about the social media playing both ways here, because I do think it's a way for people to speak out. But also, I think the Weinstein thing would have come out years ago if people had videotaped and just made videos on their phones and put them on social media.
Yeah, it's a wiretap it's of kind of the model that was...
Not even that, just like the surveillance culture we live in now, where no matter where you are, someone could probably be filming or taking pictures or watching this happening, or you post it on Twitter and it goes viral, and the best PR campaign in the world can't really stop that. And I think that that's also part of...
But video didn't bring him down, though.
But there's a virality to it. I think it's not just about public shame, because I think people have been shamed in the past and nothing has really happened. I mean, you look at Hollywood, not just Hollywood, look at what happened in the technology scene in the US a couple of months ago. All of the venture capitalists, there are many founders that were accused of very similar behavior. I think the issue now is what happens when they get caught, right? Because there is an economic cost, which is why the board of Weinstein is scrambling, which is why they want to distance themselves from him. So it's not just about, oh, I'm going to videotape you and shame you. I think social media has created the digital infrastructure that has made it far more easy for consumers to exert economic power, which tips the balance scale. So it's not just, I'm going to shame you. It's, we're not going to buy your products. We're going to boycott your movies. We're going to write letters to your investors. We're going to write letters to your clients. It's much more action oriented, because let's face it, they didn't fire him because he did these behaviors, because they knew he was acting this way. They fired him because he got caught. And those are very different distinctions about, that's regardless of industry.
The social media platforms that are being used to spread the story are far more powerful and richer than the Weinstein Company. I mean, the movie distribution industry, the whole business model has dramatically changed. And so another argument, part of this, is that he's going down now because he's already weaker than he was before.
Absolutely.
Now, the French economy minister has had to backtrack after earlier seeming to favor loyalty above denouncing abusive behavior.
Bruno Le Maire, do you know any politician of whom in 10 years people will say, we knew that he was a harasser?
No.
No. Otherwise you would denounce him?
No.
No. It's complicated. It's complicated, but denunciations are part of my political identity. And then saying we all knew, I'm simply telling you that denunciations have never been and never will be part of my political identity. In any case, you don't know any harassers? I don't.
Doesn't know any harassers, he says. He did backtrack later after that exchange. But what was your reaction to that? Because he is talking about I don't want to rat people out, is what he was saying, effectively his message.
I think there is also this problem in the politics, and he's just embarrassed, with this question, and yeah.
He wants to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, now speaking of politics, the French government's reaction is to consider a bill that would have a statute of limitation on sex crimes extended from 20 to 30 years from the time the victim is an adult. And also, as we were saying at the outset, plans to penalize catcalls.
In the coming days, the Interior Minister will take stock of what is needed to implement this daily security police force, which I have vowed to do. This daily security police force will have certain special priorities, including fighting against sexual harassment, especially in public transport, where a majority of these cases happen.
How's that going to work?
I don't think that's going to work.
The point is that politics are the first also concerned by this problem. Just have to see how are the debates in the assembly, for example, you know,
in the
French
ministry,
Parliament. Yeah, and for example, when Marlène Schiappa was dealing about her willing to discuss this topic, you know, and she had to say, okay, please stop and let me speak, you know, and once also. Cécile Duflot, she was wearing a dress with flower, and she had comments
those comments are legion. But on that specific point, this idea of giving police the right to give summons, if it were, on the spot.
Why not? And I think this is the beginning of something. I know.
I disagree with that.
You know, I think in the street it is not. In the street, I have the right to walk, and you don't have to come and to say, okay, give me your phone number, and you have some rude words also, and it is the beginning, and it's the step before harassment, you know. So
you're saying it's not going to work.
No, and it's not that I don't think something should be done, but I don't think that's it for the sole reason, and I speak as a black male. That is another way for police to mess with minorities. And so I think something, you know, should be done, but to say, okay, I mean, something like that, that's a slippery slope that I don't think anyone is really prepared to go down.
I mean, I think if this legislation is going to go forward, I think the point that you're mentioning is a lack of clarity. I think right now we have terms like harassment or, you know, catcalling or, you know, whatever it is that seem to be quite abstract. There seems to be a spectrum of behaviors which can fall under that. And maybe if somebody's across the street and yelling something, is that really worth a ticket versus I'm being grabbed or inappropriately touched on the metro? So
right, but grabbing someone is not a catcall. That's assault, and that should be.
But that's already. But there's, you know, it's very, there seems to be a spectrum as to what people consider to be okay, what people consider not to be okay. So I would like to see some real clarity about this legislation, specifically about the types of behavior. And I would also love to see this accompanied by training for the police officers to be able to offer better responses than your experiences, to be able to handle properly these types of events. I do think there needs to be consequences. There's no consequences.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that in terms of if anyone's going to file a report, they should be believed. I mean, if you're being harassed and the response is what you're wearing, that's irrelevant. I mean, what you're wearing, it's like you were attacked, you were aggressed, and you know that's just for me, you know, someone just not doing their job. But in terms,
I mean, I've had people say to me, "There's nothing. Oh, somebody grabbed you on the metro. That's not a big deal." So this is where clarity comes in. We need to really start putting definitions as to know that is a big deal.
Right, but that's still assault. I mean, when you physically grab someone.
Have you tried to complain to a police officer when someone grabs you on the metro? They say, "Why are you wasting our time?"
Well, then that's the police officer.
That's a training, though. That's a training issue. That's a legislative issue. So,
right.
like,
I totally agree with that. That's a training thing. But in terms of a law, if someone putting their hands on you, technically that's assault. And if they're not covering that, then you're absolutely right.
I think we know that there's a lot of differences between what the law is and the actual application and interpretation of the law.
Right.
Do you think this is going to go anywhere, or this is Macron just kind of saying this because he is this open-minded, young, new president who wants to show that he is aware? Because I don't see how this could actually be put into practice in any practical way.
Yeah, it would mean a police officer, because what, there was a recent survey put out by the Paris Area Transit Authority, the RATP, which found 100% of women said that they'd been at some point either harassed or grabbed while on public transportation. Whether that will go somewhere.
Bike lanes. The new bike lanes in Paris. You know, if you're on your bike, you could just be on your bike and not be on public transport, right?
A plug for the bike lanes there from Rachel Donadio. By the way, the Harvey Weinstein scandal broke just as many in this country were shocked to see a French rocker by the name of Bertrand Cantat on the cover of Les Inrecuptibles. Les Inrecuptibles is the magazine that's the French equivalent of Rolling Stone. It was celebrating the return of his creativity and inspiration this 14 years after he beat to death in a drunken rage his girlfriend, actress Marie Trintignant, in their hotel room in Vilnius. She was shooting a movie there. The paper has now put out an editorial that is contrite. To our readers, it says, the suffering that this cover may have triggered has profoundly moved us. To those who feel hurt, we express our sincere regrets. What are your thoughts on when this came out?
What idiot thought that that was a good idea?
That's the problem. The problem isn't that they did something wrong. The problem is that somebody didn't see that there was a problem with something like this in the first place, which I think speaks to your systemic issue here. I mean, who approved this in the room? It had to go through multiple approvals, multiple meetings, multiple people thinking this is a good idea, much like Harvey Weinstein. You had his board, you had his staff, you had people facilitating. So, like, this is a problem with the system.
And we have also forgot that there is not only about Marie Trintignant, but also about Christina Radi, and also about the psychology of violence, you know. And this woman is also dead right now, you know, and she was her girlfriend, and he was attacking her by other ways, you know, manipulation and
putting her under psychological duress.
Violence. And I am shocked to see this, you know, because we cannot say,
If there was no Weinstein affair, would there be no apology today?
Yeah.
You think, from Les Inrecuptibles?
Yeah.
Really? You think? I mean, I'm a musician.
Yes.
I love rock, but even I know that this clown should not be on this cover. So the fact that someone approved that, you're right. It's like you have a room full of people. How does that happen?
It's not just him. Look at Chris Brown in the U.S. There's all sorts of different celebrities who have been re-embraced back after they have done horrible violence against women. Look at the NFL. Look at, like, the sports world. I mean, you're talking about a system that through whatever their words, we're sorry, forget their words, their actions are saying that this is not a cost that's too high for them. Their actions are saying that, like, it doesn't actually matter.
He did 4 years jail time.
Which is fine, but does he need to be re-embraced? Are we in a cultural shortage in the biggest culture capital, you know, of the world, where we cannot find somebody who is maybe, you know, not an aggressor against women?
Rachel Donadio, again, it's the question we asked at the outset: is France changing?
Maybe. I saw Roman Polanski on the cover of something the other day, but he's a favorite in France anyway, and it's not the same as murdering your, you know, or sorry, I don't know, the woman died. I don't know, is France changing? Maybe it is changing, but maybe it needed this American scandal to get it to change.
There is a new word, you know, it's feminicide in French, and each 2 days a woman is killed by her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, you know, and this is also a topic about this, you know, and we cannot forgive this and to let this kind of cover. It's very shocking for me.
And is France changing?
France is not changing about this, and I think we have so many things to change, and it's the moment to have this debate, and not only here, but also in politics, in our houses, because it's beginning in our houses. Educate your son before, and educate your son first before having this debate. And I think it's the first thing to do.
Sophia Lili Hosseini, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Avan Strangel. I want to thank as well Rachel Donadio, Raha Farfouche. Stay with us, though. Media Watch is next. And we say hello to Clément Bonneron.
Hi, François.
We're talking about the outrage, and you heard the comments of the panel there regarding that cover of, again, it's the French equivalent of Rolling Stone magazine, Les Inrecuptibles.
Absolutely, and Elle, the French magazine, responded this week by placing a photo of Marie Trintignant on its cover. You can see the cover here. Let me scroll down. You can read the headline, "In the name of Marie." Elle says that Marie Trintignant has become, I quote, "the face of all women victims of male violence, the face of the 123 unknown unknown women killed by their partners last year. The magazine concludes that Marie Trintignant, we won't forget you. It will need more than the obscene media promotion of Bertrand Cantat to extinguish the flame. Reactions on Twitter have been overwhelmingly positive. Let me show you this tweet of this user saying that Elle has shown once again that it is a progressive, a politically conscious and feminist magazine. She says, this is hot stuff.
And on the issue of what we were talking about at the outset, which is this hashtag, which, by the way, our social media editor, Claire Mufson, is saying is being picked up by some people in the Anglo-Saxon world. They're paying attention to it. But again, we've been toying with the translation of it, because there's a squeal on your pig, a rat out your pig. Several different ways of translating it.
Absolutely, the phrasing is a bit difficult here, and the hashtag has actually prompted a lot of men to reconsider their attitude towards women. Many say they're surprised by the magnitude of the problem. This user here saying, by reading all of these tweets, I realised that most women have actually faced sexual harassment. It's scary. I don't get it. This other user, meanwhile, saying, wondering whether there is anything he can do to help solve the problem. Now, while the volume of responses, of course, may be eye-opening for some men, there is something deeply wrong in the fact that many of us are surprised, says a journalist from Europe 1. She wrote a piece on French website Medium entitled The Great Hypocrisy, saying that 100% of women have been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed. If you're surprised that so many of your friends are speaking out, she says, maybe it's because you never paid attention to what they were saying.
All right, and you heard it earlier there, the economy minister effectively saying, I'm not a snitch.
Absolutely, and he's not the only one to criticise the hashtag rat on your dirty old man, rat on your pig. Raphaël Enthoven, a well-known philosopher here in France, said on Twitter, the problem is that a snitch will always be a snitch, no matter how good his or her intentions. It echoes really what Bruno Le Maire was saying earlier. Now, if you compare indeed the wording, balance ton porc hashtag with the Me Too hashtag that's been trending in Anglophone countries, it's quite different. The Me Too hashtag encourages women to talk about their experiences and their trauma, while the French hashtag, on the other hand, urges women to reveal the identity of the man, of those who sexually assaulted them.
What do you think of the difference between these two hashtags, Rob?
I mean, this is what we were talking about earlier. I find that it's asking a lot of women. It's asking a lot of women who have suffered some of these crimes, some of these uncomfortable situations, to have to be the ones to get out there and point fingers, not to mention the legal ramifications of doing so. I personally much prefer the Me Too, because I think it demonstrates in a very easily relatable way the scope of this issue and how so many different women are encountering it, versus, unfortunately, we have a culture of victim blaming, of victim shaming. So I would much rather concentrate on showing solidarity and showing the widespread systemic issue than trying to tell somebody, putting pressure on somebody who might lose their job or might lose opportunities. No, you should go out there against a power dynamic, someone who maybe has more power than you, and point fingers and name names.
Easier said than done.
Yes.
But isn't balance ton porc, that is power. I mean, I would think psychologically that if the threat of sort of being revealed, there are going to be a lot of guys, they're bullies. And so if there's this fear that they're going to be confronted, I guarantee you some attitudes are, oh, okay, now that we're hitting critical mass here, maybe I better chill out.
But you need critical mass. So you're asking people, you know, it wasn't one, it was
right.
30, 40, however many came out in many of these cases, right?
Right. But I mean, we're seeing it now. And, you know, it's only going to get bigger, I think.
Absolutely. And that's something that a lot of commentators have picked up on, including Elisabeth Lévy from the conservative website Causeur. Unfortunately, you can't see the article here, but she says that speaking out freely is not the same thing as publicly naming and shaming individuals.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. I want to thank you, Clément Benoit. I want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.